Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce today's guests. Yes, I have two guests, Neuner and Ryan Cassin. Hi, Stephen and Ryan.
Hey there.
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you for being a guest on this podcast. And I am so excited to have you as guests because you two, first of all, you both are amazing entrepreneurs. You had several businesses. You are always, you just basically, you are what an entrepreneur is, just like always looking for the opportunities. But now what you are is you are helping other entrepreneurs to actually have the freedom that they so want by giving them the resources that they need in order to make their lives better. Did I put it in correct words?
That's exactly right. So what we've observed in talking to entrepreneurs is that there's this sort of teeter-totter that we find a lot of them on, right? They're, of course, prioritizing freedom in their lives because I think that's a fundamental reason that an entrepreneur becomes an entrepreneur is to gain new levels of freedom in their life. And oftentimes we're catching them at the moment that getting that freedom means sacrificing growth in their business. Or if they're prioritizing growth really aggressively, we're seeing them sacrifice the freedom that they sought as, becoming an entrepreneur from the very get-go. And so we're finding entrepreneurs in these big swings between freedom and growth. And we are on a mission to help entrepreneurs achieve new levels of freedom and growth. And we do that by providing them executive assistants who are really, really high leverage contributors to their team so they can finally get out of their business on the day-to-day sort of basis and begin to get freedom and growth in their lives.
For sure. And I just want to hear it's a great opportunity to give a shout out to our mutual client, Gill, who introduced us. And I've seen firsthand how the amazing executive assistant, her name is Emily, that you actually got for Chad. She's unbelievable, and how it actually created such a difference in Chad's life in terms of he's a busy contractor, but by having a virtual assistant, executive assistant is virtual, and she just completely transformed the way the business ran because actually Chad now has the freedom that he wanted. So I've seen it firsthand. So I can totally be I can give you a testimonial from seeing it happen to others. And I have my own executive assistant, and I totally believe in how much it changes your life as an entrepreneur, because then you have the time to work on your business or work on other projects. So definitely I've seen that happen. So let's, first of all, let our listener know how they can find you. So your website, the name of your company.
Yeah, of course. Our business is called Superpowers, and you can find us online at superpowershq.com. And I'll just echo what you said. Chad has been an amazing relationship. He's an incredible entrepreneur, but I think that he's a great example of somebody we caught at exactly the right moment where he was thinking about getting freedom and growth, but also had really fantastic systems and processes within his business, which is certainly a testament to the work that you've done with him. Our assistant was able to go in there and be able to run with so many things so much more quickly because the business was in a really, really good place from an operations and process standpoint. And so anytime that we can go into a business where the entrepreneur has a really clear vision for what their role is and how they want to contribute to their business, sort of typically playing that visionary role. And they're in this mindset that they need to get the right people around them for the operations and processes, the sort of day-to-day. That's a recipe for success for us.
Absolutely. And that's why we collaborate so well. So, and that's again, why I'm so excited to have you and talk about the executive assistant part, because we can create the systems, but they have to be executed. And having an executive assistant helps tremendously. So let's talk about, what makes a great executive assistant. There is the book by Michael Hyatt where he wrote about world-class executive assistant, right? I think that's the name of the book, Your World-Class Executive Assistant. I interviewed Cameron Herold on my podcast, and he absolutely recommended hiring an executive assistant. There is a lot of, yes, you need an executive assistant, but let's really break it down for our listeners. Why do you need an executive assistant? And what will the executive assistant do? Because I know that that's a question. I mean, I had that question before I hired my first executive assistant. It's like, how am I going to ever delegate to that person? And what is that executive assistant going to do? So what is your advice on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I know that for the folks that we work with, entrepreneurs specifically, I think what they need in an executive assistant is different than, say, a corporate executive or, a really small business like a one-person business trying to make that first hire. Our sweet spot is finding those entrepreneurs that have other members of their team, and they're finally ready to stop being the blocker on everything that they've been, a blocker on in the past, right? And so an executive assistant helps them expedite and move through things more quickly. The biggest thing that we see and the most important trait that we hire for is that our executive assistants need to have a growth mindset. And that's so critically important because entrepreneurs, by definition, have a growth mindset. And we've found that whenever we make a hire that, isn't the right fit for some reason, that's oftentimes the number one limiter, is that there's an expectation that what I do today is what I'm going to do next year and 5 years from now. But entrepreneurship doesn't work that way. Your roles and responsibilities change and grow with the business. And so executive assistants who also have this growth mindset, I think, are so critical. And that's why we're big believers in sort of what we call 3 C's: curriculum, coaching, and community. That's sort of the secret sauce of what we're doing. It's what we have found feeds an executive assistant's growth mindset. And so curriculum in the form of ongoing learning and quarterly learning events and, basic playbooks on how to excel at really high level with executive assistant responsibilities. Coaching, professional coaching, so important because you've got to feed this growth appetite that they have, but our entrepreneurs are too busy to do it themselves. And the last piece, and this has been the most surprising piece to just see the impact of it, is the community. Our executive assistants, where they sit, on the org chart of the businesses they're a part of, it's sort of beside the CEO, founder, owner, right? They aren't on the ops team. They aren't on the sales team. They don't naturally fit in anywhere else. And so to have a community of fellow executive assistants who understand them, who can provide advice and perspective and experience sharing is super, super valuable to really high performance and also really high job satisfaction, which of course those go hand in hand.
Absolutely. So the curriculum, the coaching, and the community is something that you provide to the executive assistants, so you can actually have the world-class executive assistant.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the question on, let's say me as an entrepreneur, I'm looking to hire an executive assistant for the first time. I haven't had one. I got my business to, I have a growth mindset. I want somebody that has a growth mindset. I got my business to a point where I feel like I want to take it to the next level, but I know that if I'm not going to basically let go of some things that I'm doing, I'm not going to be able to expand. So I become the bottleneck, right? And I come to you and I say, okay, Ryan and Steven, executive assistants sound awesome. Yes, I listened to the podcast by Cameron Herold, and that's what he said to do. Great. But what is that executive assistant going to do all day?
Yeah. And I'll let Ryan, cover the first part. But one of the things that I think that's really important in what you said is that so often the entrepreneurs hit that inflection point, right? And they hit it in different points, and they realize that, what they've done is not enough. It's just not enough for them to go to that next level unless they just continue to sacrifice, right? And so that's that sort of inflection point. It happens in different entrepreneurs' lives in different ways, right? But ultimately, that's where they get. And so initially, I think that what happens a lot of times is, oh, executive assistant, they hear it and they say, okay, I need to activate on it. But very much their mind is, well, if I could just get out of this stuff, if I can get out of, inbox, I get out of my inbox and have someone manage my emails and manage my calendar. That's sort of what they get the initial thinking around, right? So when they think of this role, it's like, how do I get out of all this stuff, right? So that I can, go to the next level. Well, what we have done really is we really consider those core fundamental things that are wonderful to have in any assistant. But what our secret sauce through the community coaching or curriculum coaching community is we've expanded what's possible for people with their assistants, right? And so there's a lot more in what ways that someone can engage this role and go to different levels.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
And that's exactly right. So what, to your question, Adi, I mean, there's that core set of playbooks, right, that we're coaching and providing the curriculum to executive assistants to make sure that they're showing up on day one for our entrepreneurs with that sort of shared set of problems that every entrepreneur deals with. I'm flooded by email and I can't get out of it, right? Sure. I'm getting tons of calendar requests or scheduling requests or going back and forth on calendaring, and I don't want to, offer a cold Calendly link. I want to have something that feels a little bit more personal, right? I've got, an overflowing task list of things that if I just put some definition around what needs to get done, I could delegate most of these things out, but I'm blocked by all of the things that are on my to-do list. There's the weekly planning. How am I going to align my quarterly or annual goals with literally how I'm spending my time next week? So these are some of the things that we'd consider like the core playbooks. And one of the and the relationship grows from there, of course. I mean, there's always going to be something specific to the individual, but by really focusing on answering this question, what can a really high leverage executive assistant do? We came up with some other core playbooks that have been really valuable that I think are kind of surprising sometimes for the folks that we talk to. So background briefs. This is a really simple one, but it's really high impact. So if I'm about to talk to a prospect for the first time, I have my assistant prepare a background brief that gives me that quick 10-minute browsable look at who they are, what their education is, what their interests are, what they posted lately on social media. What are those natural connection points that I can bring into a conversation and just kind of lower the temperature right from the get-go and be more friendly, frankly, right? So that's one of them. The other is the Focus 50. This is a really important one to us because entrepreneurs are really well-intentioned about keeping up with the friends and family relationships that are important to them. But when they tell their best friend that they're going to call them next week, and then that call happens 3 weeks from now, the best friend often doesn't understand why that's the case. And yet that time has flown by for us. And so Focus 50 is keeping an eye on all of your 50 most important personal contacts, sort of a personal CRM. And your assistant is going on social media and seeing, are there new baby arrivals? Are there new weddings or anniversaries? Is the birthday coming up? How can we then go and do some strategic gifting, which is another one of our core playbooks, to make sure that we're recognizing people and really helping the entrepreneur show up the way they want to the people they care about in their lives. And so when you go deeper on asking this question, what can a really great executive assistant do? You find this garden of opportunities of things that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily have created as assignments for your executive assistant yourself, but you say, absolutely, I would love all of those things. Those would make my life better.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes, Stephen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, and just to add to that is what I think that happens is those relationships were formed because the entrepreneur, whether they knew, that they were an entrepreneur or not, when they developed the relationships, they're attracted by the nature of the entrepreneur, right? So they build these relationships based on who they are. The business demands more and more and more, and there's no limit to the amount of growth, right? So it's one of those things you just continually can plow into. And so those relationships can easily become neglected. And it's kind of like the frog in the kettle. You don't mean to, they don't mean to, but they lose some of that entrepreneurial energy for those relationships. But it's not often by design. It's sort of by, just they've been focused on the business. And so a really great assistant, some of these playbooks can really be impactful because it allows them to to show up as the entrepreneur in those relationships. Myself example, I've been married 18 years. The things that got my wife to say yes are the things I need to do. Bring that creative energy, that entrepreneurial spirit to keep our relationship fresh into 18, 19, 50, 80 years of marriage, right? If we get to live that long. So
for sure. I can relate to that. I mean, this is our 25th year, 25th anniversary. So definitely you have to continue to do that. But you also have to allow the freedom and the time to do that. And that's why if you have somebody actually taking care of all this stuff that, frees you up, how would you recommend, like for an entrepreneur, let's say we have entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now, how can they make a decision whether the activities that they are doing should be passed to their executive assistants, or should they say, well, it takes me only 1 minute to do it, so I better do it because it will take me 5 minutes to show somebody. So, that maybe I'm the only one who does that, but I'm sure others do it as well, right? So what's your recommendation, what to delegate and what not to delegate?
Yeah, that's sort of death by 1,000 minutes, huh?
Just like an entrepreneur is listening to us right now, and they are thinking, and I understand the difference, right? They have an executive assistant, you still need to utilize them, right? And they think, okay, well, how do I know what tasks, or maybe I'm saying tasks, so it's not just tasks like following an SOP, but what activities should I delegate? And how do I know that what activities I should keep for myself? Like from your experience, how do you approach that question with the entrepreneurs that you work with?
That's a great question. So what we do is we go, when we talk to entrepreneurs, they have a pretty strong sense of what their, what strategic coach would call their unique ability is, right? And Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, has written a ton about unique ability. And you Google unique ability, you'll find a million resources on it. And that's kind of what the core that we're trying to get at for the entrepreneurs. Where do you do your best, highest value, easiest work? It doesn't even feel like work when you do it. It feels like play. For a really gregarious entrepreneur, this might be going out and meeting new prospects and telling the story of your business and enrolling them as customers, right? For others, it might be product development and getting really deep on the details and tinkering with, those little 1% changes that accumulate over time, right? But where is that unique ability? And then we go through in our discovery call process and we ask, okay, just tell us, what are the things that are getting in the way of you staying in that space? What are the things that distract you and aren't the highest value? Things you might be good at, but aren't your unique ability, right? And so oftentimes we see a lot of commonality in email inbox management, strategic to-do list management, calendar management, project management, research and data entry. Some of those other opportunities we talked about, like getting background briefs or doing the Focus 50 where they're keeping in touch with their clients. Those are the most common places where our assistants will get started and build a foundation in the first 90 days. And, it takes a while for that relationship to warm up. We sort of talk about the onboarding and getting really good at those items that I just listed out as sort of taking 90 days. In the first 30 days, your executive assistant, in our experience, is getting to know you. All right, what is your business? Who's on the team? What are their roles and responsibilities? In the next 30 days, they're trying to understand you. We want to get them to understand context. When you say email Bob about that one thing, your assistant needs to know who Bob is and what that one thing is, right? So you can kind of get this shared vocabulary. And then in the last 30 days of this sort of initial 90-day, relationship building, it's anticipate you. I know you well enough and understand you well enough that I can begin to anticipate what you would do in this situation, and I can take action proactively on your behalf. And so that know you, understand you, anticipate you, we've seen that relationship grow. And ultimately, when your assistant can anticipate you, you get to the point that the assistant leads the relationship. So the entrepreneur is the boss, but the assistant should be the leader in the relationship. And it's a really, for the right entrepreneur, it's a real big shift in responsibility, because finally they have somebody who's able to help lead them toward what their goals are. And they don't have to keep driving on every little detail and every little thing that comes across their desk.
Absolutely. And it's always being a step ahead. That's what I like to say to my executive assistant in terms of like always a step ahead from me, anticipate the week, look at the week and block time. So I'm not like back to back calls and I actually have time for other things, right? Or anticipate that we're going to get an email from this particular client and let's anticipate that and send the email first, right? Or help, whatever it is, but I like it in the leading part in terms of the anticipation, in terms of the leading, in terms of, what I want is to show up to work every day and just do the things that I like to do, right? That is my unique ability or my superpower, however you want to call it, which in my case will be being the visionary or creating on the business or finding new opportunities or interviewing people and talking to people and developing my network, because that's where I thrive and that's what I like to do. And then the other things that are more administrative or tactical execution of the strategy can be given delegated to the executive assistant, because that's, I think what you were saying is like, if we get a high power, high level, very well trained executive assistant, you can give them the strategy and then they figure out how to basically implement it and do the tactical steps that need to be done in order to help you achieve the goals, right?
Yeah. And be able to really connect with you, because when someone really gets into their unique ability, as Ryan said, the coach concept or superpower, they tend to grow, right? The growth comes. And so in order to keep up, that goes back to the beginning of the conversation, was that growth mindset. And that's where we found the community and ongoing, curriculum has been so important, because it allows the assistant to continue to level up, allows them to be in a community of other people that are leveling up, instead of one brain, right? Of how am I going to help a D in this situation? I now have a collective mind of many other, a network of executive assistants. And so I think a lot of times when you just have that view or that lens of, well, they're just going to manage his email, they're going to manage his calendar, going to manage his stuff, and don't see that higher level of the opportunity, you miss on some of the ROI, right? You miss on some of the ROI, because just like an entrepreneur, we're talking before that we came on the podcast, you're in Vistage, Ryan and I have been in entrepreneurs organizations, strategic coach. We understand that as the entrepreneur, but it's really important because the executive assistant is such a unique role tied to that entrepreneur to, that they have to be able to grow and keep up, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love the idea of the Focus 50 and the, you mentioned in terms of like doing the background bio or the background brief. Those are ideas definitely outside the box. Now, in terms of like, definitely you have the core, which will be the email management, the calendar management, the, the plan for the week, etc. Any other ideas like that our listeners can use, or they will go, oh yeah, that's a great idea, that just thinking outside the box of what an executive assistant can do for you?
For sure. So a few others that are really, really valuable. Client connection. So this is one of the things that I think in businesses without large sales teams, what we'll do is have the assistant set up Google alerts and then follow various, the client's social media pages for the business. And this is really valuable in B2B in particular. We've also found it valuable in real estate, but following your customers on social media, following them on, their news articles, and finding non-salesy opportunities to send emails that are encouraging or congratulatory, right? How often are we only, unfortunately, talking to our customers when we want something from them, right? Renew the contract, expand the contract, right? Pay up. What are the ways that we can engage with our customers that are, show them that we're truly invested in them on their team? One of the other things that we do is a daily brief and bullet. So the daily brief is a morning email. It's the newspaper review, right? Here are all the appointments that you have coming up. Here's what's going on today in your world. Here are all of the attachments or supporting materials that you need at your fingertips for the day ahead. Here's everything in one email. And so that's the email I always star and keep at the top of my inbox, right? Because I want to be able to have that right one click away. And the daily bullet at the end of the day is that reporting in that your assistant does to say, here are all the closed things I took care of throughout the day. Here are the things that, just so you know, they're taken care of, are on my radar for the day ahead. It's that really valuable email that you look forward to at the end of the day, because it allows you to transition from work mode to hopefully, relaxation mode at the end of the day, right? Nobody can fully we've yet to work with anyone who fully puts their business out of mind at the end of the day, but it lets you know that things are under control and being taken care of. So hopefully at least you can sleep a little better. And then one of the things that we really strongly recommend everybody does with their executive assistant, if they're working, particularly if they're working, remotely, right, is that daily meeting, that daily sync up. Here's, it should be run by the assistant. So the assistant calls, says, hey, here's the appointments that we have coming up for the day. Here's everything I'm working on. Here are the things that you're blocking on. I'd like to get off your plate. Can you just answer these few quick questions for me? It gets the day set up really well for a high effective day for the assistant. And then the weekly meeting. I think this is a really critical one where the assistant goes through and looks ahead at the calendar, a week ahead, and says, okay, how are we aligning with what you need to get done and what you want to get done in the business and what's going on in the business, and make sure that it's reflected on your calendar. So you've got the time to do things and you aren't kind of running around feeling like you've got to do three things and at the same time.
Great. Those are all amazing actions that totally will free the entrepreneur. I can totally see that. So can you tell me, do you have a story that you like to tell that shows the example of the before and after? I know we talked about Chad, and that's definitely, he's a great success story. But do you have any others that you'd like to share?
Yeah. We'll keep identities confidential here. It's so funny. We have one client who came to us who was just super stressed. And that's understandable. A lot of people come to us sort of at a breaking point, right? Things are breaking down in the business, aren't going as well. They don't have the relationship with the business that they want, that, ultimately is going to get them to where they want to be. And burnout is a real big concern. And so this client had a habit of, when he was stressed, he would sort of rub his head right along his hairline. And what was happening is he was literally creating a bald spot for himself in this area. And it was amazing. On our 30-day check-in call with him, the bald spot was gone. He had literally finally been able to relax and sort of get that relationship with the business that he wanted. He felt like things were under control for the first time, that he was literally regrowing hair. And so, I mean, that is an extreme example. That's not a typical one, but for me, it's just so visually powerful to show the transition that had happened in this guy's life.
Absolutely. I can see you now advertising. Okay, you want to get rid of your bald spots, hire an executive assistant. So, Ryan and Steven, I know your executive assistants can also help, or you have the resource to also help entrepreneurs in terms of the marketing that they need, or like not the marketing assistants, right? Or if they're having a podcast, so you find the resources to help them with that, right? So
absolutely.
How does that work?
So one of the things that we have is a back office team. And this is a team of people that your assistant can interact with, can work with, to make sure that, the many things that come across an entrepreneur's desk sometimes require skills beyond what an assistant is going to have, right? Your sort of standard email, calendar, and Microsoft Office set of skills, right? And so we have a back office team of video editors, graphic designers, audio editors, website designers, and developers. All of these sort of really specialized function areas that if you have a need, for instance, to create a PDF marketing piece, or you want to create a one-off social media graphic, and your marketing agency is busy, or, this is something that doesn't really fall within the normal parameters of what they would do, your assistant can call on team members in our back office and have that work done for them.
Great. So that's a whole team. I like it because, you can have the whole team. As entrepreneurs, we don't want to hire. It depends on the size of the business, right? But if you're talking about a small, medium-sized business, you want to operate like a big business, a bigger, larger, but you want to also stay agile and nimble and not have to have all those expenses. But if you have somebody already vetted and you have the executive assistant able to work with them, it just makes life so much easier. So,
and I think what we found is that there's this frustration out there because everyone knows about sites like Fiverr or Upwork, or, you know, there's 100 of these, right? Where you can go and you can find really specialized help. But again, for a lot of odd projects, things that typically fall to an executive assistant, the entrepreneur doesn't have time to go find, you know, and vet a graphic designer on Upwork and then hire them and then manage and communicate with them and then revise and edit with them and then get them paid. I mean, it's just the friction. Anytime there's friction, it's not an additive thing, right? One piece of friction plus another piece of friction doesn't make two pieces of friction. It's exponential. And every additional piece of friction makes it that much more likely, exponentially less likely that you're going to actually get the thing done. And so what we did is we said, where are those common points where assistants get assigned things that they may not have the direct capabilities themselves, but they can go and, you know, again, through sort of teamwork element, get them done.
Absolutely. I think it's a great, great service. So we're coming to the closing of the podcast, but I have another question. How do you evaluate the effectiveness of your executive assistant? Like, let's say I'm a business owner and I have my executive assistant and I want to set up KPIs. I want to set up measurements of success. So I will know in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year from now, or measuring actually, like I like to measure KPIs in the business on a weekly basis, if not daily, right? But might be daily. It's a little bit too much for this one. But let's say on a weekly basis, monthly basis, what KPIs have you seen that worked in order to evaluate an executive assistant?
Yeah. So some of this is a little bit customized to what the entrepreneur specifically needs. So there's not one size fits all. Some people say I've got 4,000 emails in my inbox and I need to get down to zero just for my own sanity. How close are we? Right. So there are some really hard KPIs like that. There's also hard KPIs like, is the entrepreneur spending time doing the things that they want to be doing, that they feel are their most natural, you know, sort of fit, their superpower, if you will. So what we're doing is we're doing 30, 60, and 90-day check-ins with our assistants and with our executives. And I'd be happy to share some of those with you. But basically, we're looking, you know, does our assistant understand what is stressing the client out, what their priorities are, what their goals are? Are the check-ins happening regularly? You know, are the things that in that first 30 days are really building the foundation of the relationship? Are they just happening? Is the communication developing in a way that says this is going to be a productive, positive work environment? Dislikes, things that energize the client, things that drain energy from the client. There are so many soft, I think, learnings that need to happen, especially early on, for the person with a growth mindset and sort of a servant's heart to be able to be really successful in that relationship.
Absolutely. I love the growth mindset and the servant heart. That's a good one. Yeah.
And sometimes what we also find is depending on, you know, where we were introduced, like so much of the work that we do, they come from introductions, right? Of other people that we've helped that, you know, we've made a difference and now they're introducing us to someone new. But where they're coming in from, what is their background, right? Because if they haven't been through a strategic coach, they haven't had the entrepreneurial coaching, they haven't been part of these different programs, sometimes they also need coaching as well to be able to maximize that relationship. And so that those check-ins Ryan talked about are really impactful in order to help the entrepreneur understand how to get more out of the relationship as well.
Absolutely. So it's a growth both ways. You know, it's like, yeah, I totally agree. Wow, that has been such an amazing interview with so much data and so much information about how to actually be successful when you have an executive assistant, and really brought home what I knew, but it brought it with more conviction that you do need an executive assistant in order to be successful, and you do need to work in your unique ability superpower as an executive, your superpower zone, and then bring this is why the Superpower HQ, right? So superpowershq.com. That's how they can find you. And, you know, look at the website and definitely get in contact with Steven and Ryan. Steven, Ryan, any other way to get in contact with you that you suggest?
That's the best way. Our emails are on the website there. And, our discovery call process is super fun. We have a conversation about how to make your business better. It's not salesy. It's really, really low pressure. And so we've really enjoyed being on your podcast. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share what we're passionate about.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.